Okay. Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you here today for the last reading of 2023. My name is Jennifer Franklin. I'm the program director of the Hudson Valley Writers Center. Thank you for coming today to celebrate our wonderful recently published students in memoir, fiction, and poetry classes. If this is your first time joining us for a reading, welcome. We hope you continue to come to our online readings, classes, and events. Please check out our website for the complete list of offerings. We hope all of you will return on Sunday, January 21st, as we launch our 2024 reading series with four of the most decorated poets writing today: Kazim Ali, Cynthia Cruz, Jane Hirschfield, and Dorianne Lux, as they read from their brand new poetry collections. I want to thank the board, our teachers and students who are the beating heart of the center. We also want to recognize the foundations and all the organizations who support us, including the Bydale Foundation, the David G. Taft Foundation, NISCA, and Arts Westchester. I also want to thank my colleagues, Sophia Bannister, Misty Arnell, Christina Papadopoulos, for all of their hard work. And of course, my colleagues who are the other teachers with published students today at the Hudson Valley Writers Center, Susan Hodara and Jonathan Vatner. We are so happy to have all of you here today. Bonni Brodnick is going to read first. She is the author of the brand new memoir, My Stroke in the Fast Lane, A Journey to Recovery, from August, Willis Books and Company, 2023, and Pound Ridge Past, now in its second edition. Formerly with Conde Nast Publications, Glamour, and House and Garden magazines, Bonni has written scripts for Children's Television Workshop, was a weekly newspaper columnist, and was editor of 2 academic magazines. She's an award-winning communications specialist, a member of Pound Ridge Author Society, and has a blog. In addition, Bonni is an ambassador for the American Heart Association and a proud stroke survivor. She is a longtime student of Sold Out Susan, Susan Hodara's memoir workshops. Susan is going to say a few words about having Bonni in class. And please don't forget to buy Bonni's book. I have been seeing on Amazon that it's up in the #1 memoir in a lot of on a lot of lists at Amazon. So congratulations, Bonni. And Susan, I'm going to unmute you so you can say a few words to us.
Okay, good. No, Bonni, hi. I'm so glad you're doing this reading because let me just say, I don't want to say too much and I didn't prepare, but it was before the pandemic that you started coming to class, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so Bonni came to class and I think it was the book class, not the memoir workshop, or was it both?
It was memoir.
It was memoir. Okay, good. So anyway, Bonni came in with her story about her stroke, but she was so, I don't know, so confident and put together and determined to write this book. And then you mentioned this, Bonni, to me, that you had taken me aside to say that I'm sorry, I'm not as fluent reading as I would like to be, but I never noticed anything that would stop you. And sure enough, you were in the group for, I don't know, for a while, and then you just took off. And the next thing I know, you have the book published. And you sent me a copy and I read it. And it's an amazing book that has taken so much shape since the class. I have to give you credit for that because anyway, that's what I want to say. I think this book is so powerful. And I know that's what you set out to do. And you were just, I think what was the original title? Something about grit.
Grief and Grace, a stroke of transformation.
Yeah. Well, okay, grief and grace. Well, there was definitely grief and grace, but there was also something about grit. And you have grit.
Grit and grace.
Great. Yeah, that's right. Grit and grace. So it's the grit. And there it is. And it's in the book. And it's also in the way that you put the book together, just took it over in your life and put it together, gave it priority.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Well,
yeah.
my turn?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing it now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank Jen and Susan and the whole Writing Center for asking me to read tonight. It's really a pleasure for me. So thank you. Thank you. So the book is dedicated to my mother. Dedicated to my mother, who gave me life not once, but twice. Chapter 1, Easter Sunday morning. The day began like any other day. I splashed my face 4 times with cold water, a good luck ritual. That morning, though, I thought of the pings, little blips of pain in my head that I had the night before. They've been coming on and going the past few weeks, brief twitching sensations floating through my brain and vanishing. I hadn't mentioned it to my husband and didn't think to call my doctor. You can't run to the doctor for every little thing, I said to myself. I dressed quickly, took one last look in the mirror, and changed my shoes to a lower heel. After all, I was only going to pick up my mother. We'd have early Easter dinner, and then I'd drive her back to Westport. The table was set in a springy pastel theme. In the middle was a porcelain bunny sitting on a patch of fake grass amidst chocolate eggs and jelly beans. And the night before, I baked a lemon blueberry cake, taking a shortcut by baking a lemon cake from a box and throwing a few handfuls of blueberries into the batter. The cream cheese frosting, made from scratch, would hopefully mask the haste with which I'd put together the cake. A ham was diagonally crossed, each diamond studded with a clove, and put under a crown of aluminum foil in the refrigerator. All we needed to do was put it in the oven when I returned. Something by Verdi was playing in the kitchen. Good morning, sweetheart, I said. Do we have any more milk? Andrew asked. The carton was near empty. And after, I have to read with this handy little thing. The carton was near empty, and he'd used it for his coffee and a bowl of cereal. He'd saved just enough for my tea. Another morning ritual: fill an empty large teacup with water and a bag of Earl Grey, put it in the microwave for 3 minutes, take it out, and transfer it to a travel mug. I'll get some on my way back, I said, as the bag splashed onto the counter. I reached for a dish towel to sweep up the mess. If I could only learn to wake up 15 minutes earlier, I wouldn't always be in such a rush. It was one of the first times I was picking up my mother instead of her driving to us. Seeing a new scratch on her car every time we visited made my brother, sister, and I decide to put the kibosh on Mom's driving. At 86 years old, she was vision impaired, deaf in one ear, the aftermath of a benign brain tumor years earlier. If ever, God forbid, she had a major accident and killed someone, my family could not bear the trauma, especially with our son David getting married this year. As I was leaving, I passed the dining room table and noticed the bow tie on the bunny was askew. I should have cut the ribbon longer. I thought the bow tie was way too short, way too tight. Looks wimpy, I said to Andrew as I kissed him on the cheek. He grabbed me in a full embrace. It felt good to be in his arms. See you later, he whispered. Stellar. That was the word I used to describe my life. My dream project and a documentary film saw us getting accepted into film festivals around the country. In addition, I have decades of experience in journalism, communications, and media. I started in editorial at Conde Nast Public Relations and later did media relations for film, television, and Broadway. There was a sidestep into private school communications, where I was editor of 2 academic magazines and received 2 national awards. I had a weekly column in the local newspaper and wrote a book, Poundridge Past. My professional days were full. My marriage had just entered a new zone. Our two children had gone to school at the same college in upstate New York, which made visiting them on Parents' Day easy. Both were now graduated and on their own. David, 29, lived in Brooklyn with Libby, his girlfriend of 5 years. He was in finance, and with a wedding in only 8 weeks, was on his way to a wonderful life. Anna Claire was in her second year of medical school in Grenada, which, by the way, if you don't want to sound like a rube, is pronounced Grenada, and Granada is in Spain. My husband's practice in real estate law was flourishing. His years of toil had paid off, and we had just downsized from a house in the country where we lived for 22 years while raising the children. A more suburban townhouse, 30 minutes from Manhattan, was now more suitable to our changed lives. We were closer to classical music, concerts, ballet, museums, a theater. Also, no more having to pay to have the leaves raked and snow plowed. Excuse me 1 second. This is all to say that everything in my life, in our lives, was finally in its place, and personally and professionally, it was really great. After 31 years of marriage, we had mellowed into 2 baby boomers enjoying the ride. When I got to my mother's apartment building, about an hour away, the garden in front was awash with colors. The daffodils were waning just as the tulips took their cue to flower. I always marveled at how precise were the rhythms of the seasons in the Northeast. It was brilliant when I could control the rhythm of blooming in my own garden. Achieving it was always such a victory, as if I could actually control life itself. "Hi, Mom," I said into the lobby phone. "I'm here." I imagined her sitting by the phone for at least an hour waiting for my buzz. My mother looked like a movie star in her younger years. She had a beautiful silhouette, great smile, and charmed men wherever we went. I used to hate going to the town supermarket with her because it took so long. She knew everyone, and flirting was no longer. She knew everyone and flirted every time. But my mother had a long and happy marriage of 38 years. Mom was energetic. People called her Ever-Ready Betty, and she was always up for adventure. Though involvement in her community had slowed in the past years at one point, she was president of this historical society, the local symphony, and the PTA. Besides all of this, she was kind, generous, thoughtful, and smart. Another attribute was quick thinking. Even in her advanced years, this was not affected. "Hi, darling," she said. "Be right there." She came down the elevator and gave me a longer than usual hug. "Here, take this." My mother had filled a small Nordstrom bag with random things she wanted to discuss on the ride home. And from the look of it, we had a lot of ground to cover. There's an upcoming spring book fair at the library, an opening exhibit at a local museum, some arcane article in National Geographic, and various design ideas for kitchen backsplashes in National Geographic or in House Beautiful. David's upcoming wedding was our main topic. The family was preparing for this mid-June marriage on Martha's Vineyard, where we had a vacation home. Usually we were up there whenever the children were on the holiday break, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, and midwinter in February. Everyone in the family shared a few weeks and in midsummer, we rented it out in August, which helped cover the bills. In the car, Mom sat up in her seat, eyes sparkling, ready to discuss and learn about any and all wedding details. I told her about my outfit, the quintessential dress for June afternoon country wedding. British designer L.K. Bennett created for just this kind of event. The dress was ivory with blue and yellow flowers draped diagonally from the waist to the shoulder. Shoes, also by L.K. Bennett, matched the dress impeccably. Slingbacks with the same blue and yellow flower printed on the leather. How do they do that? With rhinestones and pearls on the vamp, these two were perfectly chic, 2-inch kitten heels, perfect height. Stunning, my mother said. This is a word she used a lot whenever we discussed fashion. She worked in merchandising, and fashion is well-known at well-known department stores, and often used this bold one-adjective word with confidence. Stunning. How are the invitations going for the rehearsal dinner? She asked. Found the perfect design, a love-themed stamp. The delightful mother-daughter banter continued. Then, only 10 minutes into the ride, and from a distance, I heard my mother shriek, Bonni! I was mesmerized by my right hand shaking on top of the console. The car barreled down the interstate highway at 65 miles per hour. My mother began to panic. Bonni! Bonni! She snapped her fingers and waved her arms in front of my face as the car continued swerving in the southbound lane. In the background, I heard my mother scream again, Bonni, pull over, pull over. Our speed decreased as my right foot, now out of my control, led up from the gas pedal. My gaze remained fixated on my trembling hand. My mother rolled down her window now, both arms flailing outside of it. Help us, help us. No one stopped. She then reached toward me and made one of the most daring and courageous moves of her life. My mother grabbed the steering wheel and veered hard to the right, sweeping us off the highway. The car bounced a few times off the guardrail before coming to a stop. We're still in full gear. The holiday traffic streamed past us at a razor pace. Perhaps drivers were in a rush to get to their Easter destinations. But if you saw someone frantically waving their both arms out the window and their car colliding against a guardrail on the side of the highway, wouldn't you know that something was wrong? 2 hours after awakening that beautiful spring morning, something changed my life forever. I wasn't lightheaded. I wasn't dizzy. I wasn't nauseous. I didn't say, Mom, something's wrong. We need to stop the car. I didn't say we needed to stop and call 911 even. The fact is, I felt nothing, absolutely nothing at all. In the United States, I was among the more than 795,000 people a year to suffer a stroke. That's it.
Thank you so much, Bonni. That must have been so frightening. Your mother was so brave to pull you over. I'm so glad that you're okay and that you've written this amazing memoir about your experience. Everyone, you can order Bonni's memoir wherever books are sold. Most of you live nearby and can order it from the Village Bookstore. And maybe you can even order it from Bonni. Maybe you can Venmo her and she'll sign a copy for you. So she'll put information in the chat if that's possible. Thank you so much, Bonni. That was wonderful. And thank you, Susan, for being such a supportive and insightful teacher to so many memoir students at the Hudson Valley Writers Center. We're all so lucky to have you.
Also, I just want to say that Susan gave me the confidence to write this book, because when I went to her is very early post-stroke, and I even said, I'm sorry, if my voice is weird, I just had a stroke. And when I was reading, especially the wedding chapter, which is really pretty moving, and I looked up and everybody was crying, I thought, this is a really good story. So thank you, Susan, for your help.
You did it, basically. You did a great job. So,
Thank
and you
you.
can hear this story is gripping, like first from chapter 1. So anyway.
Thank you. Thank you so much to both of you. And now we're going to hear from Catherine Weld. Catherine Weld is a writer and a mathematician living in Pleasantville, New York. She holds a PhD in mathematics from the Graduate Center, CUNY, and is professor of mathematics at Manhattan College. In 2013, she earned her MFA in creative writing from the Sewanee School of Letters. Her poetry has been published widely in print and online in journals such as the Cortland Review, Valparaiso Poetry Review, the Southwest Review, Gyroscope Review, Midwest Quarterly, and in her chapbook, Waking Light, from Cattywampus Press. Her debut full-length collection of poetry, After Image, was published by Pine Road Press in fall of 2023. She is a longtime student in Jennifer Franklin's Year of Your Book manuscript revision class. And it's been such an honor and such a pleasure and such a privilege to work with Kathy every week for so many years. Kathy is a wonderful poet, as you're going to hear today. She's very smart. Her poems are full of amazing images. And she has a very unique way of looking at the world, perhaps partially because of her knowledge of mathematics and science. You're just going to be mesmerized by her poems here today. Thank you so much, Kathy, for reading for us.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Jennifer. I do want to express my deep gratitude for the Hudson Valley Writers Center, which has really become a kind of home away from home. Not just Jennifer's wonderful class, but also some of the, individual workshops I've taken. And years ago, a class with Barbara Fisher, where I think I first met Tony Howarth, who's going to read in a little while. And I've really had the pleasure of workshopping with, the other two poets who are reading tonight through those classes. So it's been really great. I'm gonna just show you the cover of my book, which I'm so happy to finally see in print. And you can certainly purchase it on Amazon, and I'll have a link somewhere else on my webpage, which I'll put up in the chat. I'm going to be doing a reading in Nyack at the Big Red Bookstore with Helene Fisher, who I think I saw somewhere in the audience, and another poet from Nyack in January. And if anyone are nearby, I'd love to see you there. This book, I'm going to read a bunch of poems from this book and maybe a couple of poems from new work, depending on how our time goes. The book was written during the time when my parents were aging, and certainly it's true that a central theme of the book is the tension between the reality of our mortality and an appreciation for moments when there's just some kind of opening to a different sense of meaning. So, without further ado, The first poem is called People Learn, Glaciers Move, Years After a Guide is Lost. It's actually the first poem in this collection, After Image. He fell, it snowed. The crevice closed. Children were born. It snowed some more. They grew, married. It was June when the arm and hand appeared in the village, ejected from the glacier's base. The flesh, still white and firm. They knew his ring. Old men felt privileged to see their friend, to bid him leave. Our lost ones linger halfway down some blue-walled crevasse, nowhere to hold. Who knows if they notice when sun scrapes noon? What part, preserved by ice, might reappear? So I guess I should say that during this period of time, both my parents went through different levels of dementia. And my mom lasted for quite a long time. And she's a major figure in this book. And the second poem I'm going to read is called The Margins. And it's an early poem I wrote for her. My mother wore red lipstick to match the gown with plunging neckline, gathered skirt. Mother loved a hardware store, 9-penny nails in bins to sell by weight. She baked with phyllo dough, sewed tailored suits. And me? I'd be a flower picker, coral bells and violets. Everyone said, no one is a flower picker. They said, perhaps you could. You are my dear little girl. As girl herself, my mother longed to be a painter, but her oils, the covered bridge, the still life's azure vase with fruit, not good enough, her father, Walter said, and architecture, not a field for women. She studied chemistry for 2 years, left for marriage, divorce in Reno, second marriage, children, became the lab technician, kept meticulous accounts, loved to chat with workmen, electricians, watch them work. She paid for my private painting lessons, a loan indulgence. I snacked on milk and pecan sandies, learned to soak the grainy paper, then brush with color. She has talent, said my grandfather. So I painted lake and mountain, the blue lake and mountain over and again. Vermilion green pigment crept across the filmy margins of docks and trees. My outline becoming lost. My mother was an amazing woman, and she was actually very good at cleaning, and I was never very good at cleaning. But she left me an enormous place in the country to take care of, and it's been in the family ever since. This poem is called When Cleaning. I used to hate the fussing, each tiny scrap picked up off the floor. Constant wiping of water spots from counters. The sheets, always ironed, smelled sweet. It really doesn't take long, she said, if you fold them first. The soft hand of pressed cotton. I didn't understand. Her life seemed tied to a drudgery she needed to inflict on us. It's my home, she said. Now it's mine, and I'm scouring the range when an unexpected rain hammers the roof. The squall beats down the lake until the flattened lake flashes with silver drops. This poem is called Tender, and it's a little different. It's not so narrative. It's a language poem. You could sort of think of it as a kind of composition of images like a collage or a flower arrangement, meditating on this word tender, which is its title. Particles tend to unite, and so do mother and I each Sunday afternoon on an overstuffed sofa, not in payment of debt. A bruise, but never tender, unnecessary information. No. Add milk and cook for 2 minutes. A car attached to a locomotive to carry water, a fire hose, and swaddling to tend the sick, a fire, laced fingers, the et of the French diminutive, a cat's paw licked clean, attend to one's own sewing, the notion of stretching the mind. Then the next poem is a poem for my husband, and it's called The Bird in My Garden. I search for the head where at last lay pinned to ground by Vinca, but it's gone. I had wired it on 3 times, beak facing tail. The bird watched me. Now the funnel of its feathered neck invites raw snow. Ice congeals in its chest. I gather up the headless body, the legs, the feet. It's true, neglect is incumbent most of all in me. But soon my husband, summoned, scuffles around the garden beds until his feet touch metal. He's found the buried head. On some far day, my own mind will go, and I'll guzzle sun and rain, or wallow eye to eye with crocus. Then, love, if you're still here, please slipper your feet in leaves, dig out ice grit with your fingers. Cradle me. The next poem is called Waiting at the Window to See Something New. And it's is written for a woman who was a kind of teacher of mine and who always had this kind of a practice that every day she would stand in front of her window and she would deliberately try to see if she could see something new. Waiting at the window to see something new. But it's the same yard, bare as November. The same man builds the patio, pulls away the blue tarp, tamps concrete down. I take in bittersweet, slung from maple limbs, the burgeoning yew. The arc of my imagination is not wide enough to invent more than the tingle in the back of my skull, the sudden brightening of buds when the sun breaks through. And then this poem is called Building the New Room. During this wonderful, enormous summer place that was passed down in my family, there was a lot of deferred maintenance, and I got to learn how to become a carpenter, sort of. At first, the floorboards, pitted, slopped with paint, seemed worthless. We pried them out and found Beneath the joists, slumps of old trees, hatchet-chopped and silvery with age. Ruddy bark adhered to the roots. We had no choice but torque shoulders and knees into the crawl space to muster saws, shovels, crowbars. To dig them out was sweaty, dirty work in sand the neighbor's cat claimed for his own. Litany of vapor seals and fiberglass, the squeal of screw on ply. When we planed the shabby boards, hardened gobs of white lead, wrinkled paint florets, enduring layers of varnish flew off in a shadow and a shower of acrid dust, leaving some dimpled planks clear, others traced with flourishes of a green stain that now, in the new laid floor, sings the lineage of reclaimed wood. I think I must be out of time, so I think I will stop now, but thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. That was really gorgeous, Kathy. And you can get Catherine Weld's book anywhere books are sold. As she mentioned, you can get it on Amazon. I put the link in the chat. Please support your classmates and your fellow Hudson Valley Writers Center students by getting their books. It really does mean a lot, especially during these difficult times where it's so hard to get your book out there and noticed. But as you can see, Kathy is a wonderful poet. She also has her book by Catty Wampus. That's her chapbook. So don't forget to check that out as well. It's called Waking Light. And now we're going to hear from Jeanne Dickey. Jeanne's work has appeared in Passages North, Identity Theory Magazine, Mr. Beller's Neighborhood, and the Hungarian magazine, Irodalmi Jeleni. You'll have to say that properly for me when you come up. She's hard at work on her first novel and studies at the Hudson Valley Writers Center with Jonathan Vatner, who thankfully is here today and is going to say a few words about working with Jeanne. Welcome, Jonathan, and welcome, Jeanne.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'll just say a few words. From the moment I read Jeanne's first submission in our workshop, I realized two things. First, what a spectacular writer she is, but also I sensed just how much work she puts into every sentence. The precision and the detail is remarkable. I could sense her making decisions with almost every word. Jeanne is a humble person, and I don't think she's one to talk herself up, but I think you'll all agree that the excellence of her writing speaks for itself.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. That was really beautiful. And Jeanne, we're so happy to have you here today.
Hey, should I start?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan and Jennifer, and for this opportunity. I will just get right into my first piece is a flash fiction. It's called Midnight Snack, and it was published in an anthology, The Worst Book I Ever Read, which is ironic because Jane Eyre is my favorite book. Anyway, Midnight Snack. Apples of shame ripened my habitually pale cheeks when my English teacher, Mrs. Oakes, slammed the paper marked C on my desk. No, I confessed, I did not finish Jane Eyre. It shows, she said. I sank into my socks. If she had asked me why I didn't finish Jane Eyre, I would have told her. Instead of running away with Edward Rochester, her master and true love, Jane ran away from him and wandered around a strange, lonely town for a few weeks. So what if the lunatic who lived in his attic was actually his deranged wife? If Jane had only agreed to be Rochester's mistress and live by his side in a French villa, she'd have been happy. And if that wasn't bad enough, After spending a night in the forest, wet and starved, Jane Eyre approached the door of a cottage where a little girl was about to throw some porridge into a pig trough. She held out her cupped hands and begged. The girl filled them with cold porridge, and Jane Eyre ate it. I stopped there because I couldn't bear that she'd given up the chance to live with Edward Rochester in luxury in the first place. And now she was sort of like an animal, only infinitely worse. On my test, I wrote that Jane Eyre, humiliated after the porridge incident, went back to the woods, threw herself on the forest floor, and dissolved quietly into the mosses, ferns, and wildflowers that surrounded her. Being 17 and knowing very little about being, I was 1 year younger than Jane, who knew everything. I told Mrs. Oakes, that was the end of the book I had. Some of the pages must have been missing. I see, she said, and walked away. Mrs. Oakes had always liked me. Now she would think I was weird. That night, my mother and I sat sewing in our den. My mother was silent until the stroke of midnight when she said, Mrs. Oakes called me today. She told me that you weren't happy. I looked past her shoulders, through the glass porch door, into the woods beyond our yard. Something ruffled through the leaves, a small animal, perhaps. I was about to answer when that something emerged from the woods. It was not an animal, after all, but a woman dressed all in brown. She approached our porch windows. I shuddered and turned away, but her coming was inevitable. When I turned back, she was staring in our window. How long had she been there? Gentle and civilized as the woman appeared, wrapped in a cloak, there was yet something of the beast about her. Her nose, large for her face, quivered like a deer's. I knew instantly who she was. Mom, I said, it's Jane Eyre at our door. Look what's happened to her. My mother turned and gazed at her in silent recognition. Well, we'll have to give her something, won't we? She said, and left for the kitchen. What did we have to give Jane Eyre? It made no sense. But then, of course, it did. Whether she knew it or not, Jane Eyre was always hungry. I walked timorously to the door. The porch windows had recently been cleaned, and I could see Jane Eyre's big, bulging eyes. They said, on a cold summer night, a tree just loses its blossoms. My mother returned, and she placed not porridge, but sandwiches and coffee on our TV table. She slid the porch door open. Bigger and taller than my mother, and wider, Jane nevertheless sidled gracefully over to our sofa, demurely clutching her cloak. She could still sit like a person, and I noticed, as she nibbled daintily at her sandwich and coffee, that her hands, although thick and stony, had not yet become hooves. It was remarkable. Even as half-deer, Jane Eyre was quite the lady. My mother sat across from her, watching. Jane left very few crumbs, and even those landed on her plate. When she finished, she handed me the empty plate and coffee cup. Lives in transformation, her eyes said, full of hunger. I wondered if my mother understood her. Outside, Jane shucked the brown cloak. Pearly moonlight shone on her fur. Fully animal, she ran back into the woods behind our house. I handed the empty plate and cup to my mother. She placed 2 hefty sandwiches on the plate and filled the cup with steaming coffee. Trembling, I mounted the stairs to the attic. What would my father be doing? Would he be chained to his bed or getting ready to dance in fire? This next one is, this is a hybrid form called haibun, and it's part prose poem and interspersed with haiku. And haibuns are usually about travel. So I wrote this during the pandemic when I was longing to travel to England and couldn't. So this is called The Trip to Haworth. And I'll let you know I have a Bronte obsession because it's, well, same topic. The Trip to Haworth. The UK shaped itself in light, a blinking lamb's leg of evergreen, a sheep's head, an amorphous woolly body that tickled my nose, even from a plane. The Bronte parsonage, only a pinprick, seduced me from the sky. 5 sisters, then none, a mother and her absence. My mother died before reaching the moors, but she passed her longing to see them onto me. How can I describe a place where I've never been? An expanse of violet, restless with storms, blooms in summer. If I see you, sisters, and chance to touch your loneliness, I might become you. My quotidian life trudges like yours without a fraction of your genius. No lacy handkerchief or polite scone with clotted cream. I shape myself around your shadow, a troubled woman trapped in an attic. My matted hair and swollen lips, I'm always on fire. On the afternoon train to Keighley, I sip my cup of tea. Doors snap open and slam shut. Stops are announced. A family chats in Hindi. I close my eyes to rest. Hail to your ghosts, Charlotte, Emily, Anne. Will you bless me? Finally there, I creep my way through the town where you lived and died. There's the inn and St. Michael's Church, the museum, and beyond, the moor. What will it feel like to lose my dust in your dust, to kiss this cursed earth? And I'll close with surprise, another poem about Jane Eyre. This is called Drawing Jane Eyre. Prose poem. Huddled in the window seat with bewitched birds, reeling when the book hits her head, you fall into her deep blue eye, the cry eye, against ivory skin. Alone in a room with fawn walls, the ghost appears, then recedes. She grasps at Bessie's ruffled bonnet, a creature comfort that lingers just a while. Nightmares strike her like brambled balls. At school, in a frock so severe you drown in the brown of her dress. Nourished on a crust of bread and a bowl of burned porridge, she conjugates the verb to be. Chalk crumbles as it falls from her hand. Typhus barely touches her, yet burns Helen with sacred light. She sits beside a pitchfork stream. Despondent tadpoles weave through aching moss and fallen branches. Jane paints a woman submerged in swirling mud. Then she soars upward, a moth, sharp but pure. Her face overflows the restraints of her pointed collar. Plain as she is, Edward Rochester's eyes can't abandon her. She accepts his lamp-black proposal, incites a storm. His sequestered wife tears her veil in two and sets the house aflame. With moth wings disguised as bridal white, Jane escapes the damning smoke cloud. Away from them, her soul grows green, complex as a fern. Still, the mad woman hovers. Fluttering her wings, she asks, "Who will you be when I become you?" Thank you for listening, everyone, and happy holidays.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Jeanne. That was so beautiful. It was so nice to hear about the Brontes. I almost saw the Bronte parsonage when I was in London in October. Next time.
You should go. You should go.
Next time. Can't wait. Lifelong dream to go there.
Yeah.
Thank you for that wonderful work. And thank you, Jonathan, for working with Jeanne and all of the other students who love you so much. They're very lucky to have you. Now we're going to hear from Patricia Heminger. The experience of growing up in rural North Yorkshire, UK, along with her science background and love of nature, informs and inspires Patricia Heminger's poetry. Her poems have been published in various journals, including Spillway, Streetlight Magazine, The Right Launch, First Literary Review, as well as in her chapbook, What Do We Know of Time? She is a graduate of NYU's Science, Health, and Environmental Reporting Program and of Drew University's MFA in poetry and poetry in translation. She is currently enrolled in my Year of Your Book manuscript revision class. And we are so happy to have Patricia here today to read her wonderful poetry. Patricia already was such a fine poet when she started a few months ago with me in class. And we're really thrilled that she has decided to join us for our weekly Year of Your Book manuscript review. She's working on a full-length collection. And as you will hear today from the poems from her chapbook, it's really wonderful. Welcome, Patricia. Thank you for being here and reading your work today.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much to the Hudson Valley Writers Center and Jennifer for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to read with fellow poets here. So I'm going to read some poems from my book, What Do We Know of Time? And then some new poems, which, as Jennifer said, we're working on towards another manuscript. So the first poem is called Extinction Flight Path, and it's actually referring to a kestrel, the Reunion kestrel, which is a small sparrow-sized hawk, which went extinct in around 1700, and no one's exactly clear why. Extinction Flight Path. Let go, the kestrel calls. The chick drops from the nest's lip, wings shaking like dandelion clocks pitched in the wind, trusting like a Baromosornis, sparrow-sized dinosaur, testing bristle feathers for short glides, that wind uplift works. Come back, but it is too late. Their soft bodies refuse the ache of birth, abandon bones in desert sand, overcome escape velocity, spiral out between the stars, great cosmic sunflowers that seed planets like ours. And my next poem is the poem that opens the book. It's an elegy and also a poem of self-exploration. It shifts between observation, scenes, memories, and the dream world. So the owl. One cold snap and the deer appeared in their winter coats, gray like wolves. I would have hit them, huddled by the roadside at dusk, had it not been for their enormous eyes that stared strangely, as if they knew me. The angel was sitting on the cedar fence when I turned into the driveway and spoke to me again of joy and the power to choose, reminded me of the cherry tree that bloomed the day you died, and how the thrush exults wildly over and over, like church bells calling us to mass through the narrow lanes when we were children, insisting that the beauty of a human life is equal to the song of a bird. And somehow I knew this was true. Then I saw the angel was an owl, her enormous wings, so white and wide, and eyes that stared into me. And I wanted to know what she saw, but just as I turned to look, she lifted her wings and drifted, silent as a star, into the night. The next poem has a different title in my book, and as we all know, titles are difficult and often get changed. So this time I've called it New Birth. All my childhood in the cuckoo's song, frost-tinged grass at daybreak, The sun marks a path across the stone walk to the beech tree. Young leaves poke from old growth, uncurl like a newborn's fingers. Do not listen to the doubts of old men. The pear tree is heavy with white blossoms that drift in the breeze like plumes of a goose that grooms itself beside the canal. The muscular flap of a swallow's wings guides it to the eaves of the brick house beyond the garden. Blue carpet of forget-me-nots. Daisies dress the grass like yellow buttons on a baby's white jacket. From the doorway, I hear my mother calling. And the next poem is something that has always fascinated me, which is the fact that other animals and birds and insects don't necessarily see and hear in the same vibrational range that we do. And so it always begs the question, well, you know, what then is reality? We see only a sort of small section that our eyes and ears allow us. So this refers to that, really. It's called Out of Range. Consider the pattern of UV light directing bees to the flower's center. Magnetic fields unfelt by us, guiding geese in migration. The low, inaudible sounds elephants hear with approaching kin. That butterflies stand on a leaf to taste with their feet. Tiger moths' ultrasonic clicks, jam bats' echolocation beams. And snakes have holes in their faces to detect their prey's infrared radiation. I tell you again, she is gone forever. You answer, not all things can be seen. And the next poem is also about something that is really, really fascinating these days, and that they found some evidence that plants grow better. They open the pores in their leaves, called stomata, wider in the presence of certain sound vibrations in the range of birdsong. So this speaks to that. There's an epigraph. It's called The Necessity of Birdsong. The epigraph is, recently evidence has been mounting that plants can respond to airborne sounds. It's from the seminars in cell and developmental biology. Trees stretch toward light, rest in darkness. Leaf pores close in the moon's time zone. What if it's true that plants delight in song, that kale's crumpled leaves respond to robin's morning call, open wide their stomata, breathe in the nutrients they need to grow, to feed the world? What if birds disappear, fall from the sky, like giant hailstones in a storm? Crops wither in a world gone silent. That's a new poem, not in the book, and the poems I'll read now are also not in the book. This one is, I'm one of those people reported in the New York Times that always gets lost. If I going somewhere, I'm guaranteed to be in the wrong direction. So this is called Losing Myself in Dark Moon Preserve. Unlike butterflies that migrate with ease 1,000 miles, I can't find my way home. I've begun to study maps, plot the route from Old Beaver Run Road to Lafayette. locate Johnsonburg Swamp that I visited once, a wetland where the rare carnivorous bladderwort thrives. Its yellow flowers float in the marsh, enticing flies, open their hidden trapdoors, suck in the innocent wings. It lies close to the Dark Moon Preserve, where a map in the mowed grass parking lot displays trails. The sign suggests that butterflies swarm off the beaten path. Juniper hairstreaks, green wings cover the meadow between the stream and the red cedar forest. One could get lost in the cell phone dead zone. No need to hurry back. And 3 more poems, short. I think we've all had losses during this time. This one is simply called Loss. I've read that visual memories are easier to recall than words. So when I can't remember the name of the tree by the garden hedge, white blossoms in springtime, I think of our dog, Finn, basking beneath it, long ears stroking the earth. No, it is a dogwood tree. Similarly, the name of the bush below the bird feeder often evades me. So I imagine a miniature camel, hooves scuffing the black oil sunflower seed, and recollect it is an Andromeda shrub. When I can't think of the word oratorio, I see you singing Handel's Messiah in the choir at Carnegie Hall. Remember the standing ovation, how cold the air felt as we pushed with the crowds through glass doors out onto 57th Street, red bowed wreaths stiff with frost. But for the word loss, I picture you at Thanksgiving and Christmas, in summer on Fire Island, all of us together then, our boys, men now, splashing in the plastic pool, slipping on the wet deck, you laughing from the kitchen, the red-winged blackbird calling high in the pine. And these last two, I'm glad Kathy mentioned her husband, so I can mention mine. They both contain references to paintings of my husband. And this one is called That First Summer. Up close on the canvas, smears of emerald and sage seem out of place. I recognize the green woods when viewed from a distance. Your first painting in the garden, your parents' house in Connecticut, that brimmed hat you wore, me with the baby in the hammock, watching you, a stranger, wondering who you were, by which I mean the things we'd never talked about. How I loved the honey smell of alyssum, the flash of sky between the leaves. And my last poem is called Advent. It seems hard to write Christmas cards this year. It's true, the list grows smaller, but only by a few. So many among the living, not free to feel joy, peace. I made photo cards, my husband's painting. A red barn stands in snow, a scene from Charlotte's Web, the book we read with the grandkids last summer. After a chapter or two, captivated, they wanted to know Wilbur's fate. We wait, like the geese and the sheep, not knowing how it will all turn out. The star over Bethlehem, the light. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And I want to thank all of the audience members for being here today too. It's really wonderful the way you are all here to support your classmates. And when I was in my MFA program at Columbia, I had some wonderful teachers and there were some wonderful writers, but it wasn't an environment that where we fostered each other's work and celebrated each other's achievements. And so I was always dedicated to the idea that if I was ever involved in a program, I would make sure that we were a bonded unit where we would all support each other's work. And I'm really proud of the way all of you do that every day, day in and day out. And the teachers like Susan and Jonathan, who are so incredible about being mentors and supporting everyone's work. So thank you for that. It really makes a difference for everyone involved. And again, I'm reminding you all to buy the books. It takes a long time for people to get their work published. So please support them and look for these books. Patricia's you can get from her press or from bookshop.org or Amazon. Or if you know her, you can get one from her and she will sign it for you. Now we're going to hear from Wendy. Wendy K. Madges, a Mercy University professor, is a Pushcart Prize nominee and an award-winning poet and author. She earned her doctorate in human development and psychology at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and her master's in theater at Northwestern University. As a complement to her research on the effect of the arts on learning and development, she performs at storytelling events and festivals in the U.S. and abroad. She studies at the Hudson Valley Writers Center with Jonathan Vatner. To learn more about Wendy and her work, please look at her website, which I will be putting in the chat. Jonathan, please say a few words about Wendy.
Sure. Wendy is a delight to have in workshop. She's a sparkling personality and a generous critic. I find that her fiction has a similar engaging energy. I just want to hang out with her characters for hours, and I want to know what happens to them, and I want to make sure they're okay. That's a real skill of the storyteller, that power to make readers want to turn the page. It's hard to teach that, but Wendy has it, and I hope you'll all enjoy her reading today.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this. And thank you also to Susan, who helped me with my nonfiction. A lot of the work I worked on with Susan was sort of on the darker side, and so I'm going to stick to some of the lighter things that I've written. And thank you also to Jennifer for hosting this wonderful evening or afternoon. So today, my sweet spot is flash and microflash, both fiction and nonfiction. I'm going to share two of my microflash fiction pieces, two of my flash nonfiction pieces, and then I'm going to share this funny little hybrid thing that I wrote. The first piece was published just before Halloween in a publication called 50 Word Stories. It's titled Hornets Treat and Trick. Elsie, wielding a blue fly swatter, chases a hornet from her kitchen. Escaping, it returns to the colony's growing nest hidden in the ceiling. There, hundreds of angry hornets continue chewing through the drywall. The ceiling fan whirs, concealing their activity, until, bursting through, the swarm banishes Elsie, from their kitchen. The next story also involves bugs, but this is a creative nonfiction story. It was first published in Potato Soup Journal, which was a journal I loved, but unfortunately no longer exists. But I was lucky because this story was selected for the Potato Soup Journal Best of 2022. And so you can actually buy the hard copy of that collection. It's called City Girls. I'm the adult walking at the tail end of a single file line, about 27 and 8-year-olds. At the front of the line is the nature guy. It's the summer before I start grad school, and the city is in the midst of a terrible heat wave. It's well over 90 degrees in the shade, but we're about to leave the relative comfort of the shady picnic area to follow the nature guy out into the prairie. Acres and acres of prairie preserved just outside the city limits. I thought I knew all about the prairie. I'd read Little House on the Prairie before it was even a TV show. I'd spent weeks studying pioneer life, so I'd be prepared to teach these children about what the settlers encountered. But I didn't have a clue until I was neck deep in prairie grasses. At the front of the line, I can see Nature Guy wading into a sea of prairie grass until only his head is visible. The grasses are so tall that the kids, following him in a single file line, almost disappear behind him, as if the prairie is swallowing them up one by one. There are acres and acres of prairie without a single tree or road or even a visible path. Now it's my turn. As I step into the prairie grass, a wave of hot, humid air hits me in the face and engulfs me. Then I notice the thick, damp air is filled with little gnats and other bugs. It feels like the gnats are swarming around my face. Despite the heat, I purposely wore long pants, socks, and running shoes to protect myself against creepy crawly things. But I didn't anticipate bugs swarming around my face. This is not my idea of a good time. I got this job because I've been working as a museum educator for the Historical Society, and my boss asked me if I'd help out with our summer camp. I'm really not the camp counselor type. I'm a city girl. My idea of communing with nature is my morning walk through the city parks. I mean, I've been camping once or twice when I was a kid, but as an adult, I'm a big fan of flushing toilets, running water, and air conditioning. The thing about this summer camp is that besides a couple of field trips like this one to the prairie, most of the camp activities take place indoors in the Historical Society. Flushing toilets, running water, air conditioning, so I agreed. And here I am, neck deep in prairie grasses. Nature Guy doesn't seem to be bothered at all by the heat or worried about creepy crawly things. He's happily leading our little parade through the prairie wearing cargo shorts and Birkenstocks, totally unprotected from whatever critters may be hiding in there. So I say nothing, but I'm miserable. Then, as if reading my mind, some of the kids on my end of the line begin to complain about the heat and the bugs. I agree with every word, and I'd like to say, "You're so right. Let's hightail it out of here." But I'm one of the counselors, one of the adults. So in an effort to distract them and myself from the overwhelming heat and humidity, I begin to spew facts about pioneer life. Now remember, the pioneers didn't get to ride in the covered wagons. They had to walk like this for days and weeks on end. Don't forget, the pioneers didn't have cushioned gym shoes like we have, and the women had to wear long skirts. Just think, we'll only be here for a few minutes, but can you imagine being out here for days and weeks in this heat? And at the end of the day, they couldn't go home to flushing toilets, running water, or air conditioning. This seems to help. But just as things are starting to settle down on my end of the line, we come to an abrupt halt. It seems there's some sort of kerfuffle at the front end of the line. I'm not sure what the problem is until Nature Guy says to me, "One of the girls is afraid of bugs." Would you mind taking her back to the picnic area? No, no, I don't mind. Don't mind. I'm overjoyed. But the kids and the nature guy are watching, so I try my best to appear disappointed. As the girl makes her way back to my end of the line, one of her friends seizes the opportunity. If she's going, I'm going. Come on, girls, I say, trying to whisk them away before a total mutiny ensues. As we three city girls happily make our way back to the shaded picnic area, it feels to me as if heavenly angels, disguised as 7-year-old city girls, have come to my rescue. At this moment, I realize I've gained a deeper appreciation for the peoples of the prairie and what they endured, and for 7-year-old city girls who have the courage to speak up and be heard. This next story was published in a wonderful publication out of the UK called Funny Pearls, and it's entitled Dirty Words. In my family, there are those of us who have an affinity for dirty words and those of us who don't. Personally, I'm a fan. I think the judicious use of a few choice words in just the right context can add emphasis and impact. My sister, on the other hand, abhors all forms of profanity. She doesn't even like me to say butt dialed. Too crude. She prefers her style. I've tried to explain to her that the only reason she thinks butt dialed is crude is because she assumes butt refers to a body part, where it may in fact refer to a verb, as in, your phone butted up against something in your purse and dialed me. She's not convinced. That said, you have to be careful when and where you use a dirty word, because they can get you into trouble. In my master's thesis, I was writing about assessing children's learning, but I inadvertently omitted the last S in assess. Boy, if that didn't make me look like an ass. Luckily, a friend caught my asinine error before it was too late. Dirty words are a bit like cayenne pepper. A pinch can spice up a dish, but a tablespoon can make it inedible. Also, cayenne pepper may not be the ideal ingredient for your morning bowl of Cheerios. Context is everything. Surprisingly, even little children understand context. They know when and how to use a dirty word to spice things up. One of my very first teaching jobs was in a preschool in an upscale suburb. The preschoolers I taught knew just how to use a 4-letter word for maximum impact. I should mention that their 4-letter words may not be the ones you're imagining. Their 2 favorites were poop and puke, with poopy and pee-pee thrown in for good measure. They knew just how to drop one of these pee-bombs to make friends giggle. A string or 2 or more would send their friends into fits of hysterical laughter. From my perspective, an occasional pee-bomb or 2 is no big deal, but every once in a while they'd get on a roll. Then, in my best teacher voice, I'd remind them, those are bathroom words. You're welcome to use them, but only in the bathroom. It seems that when pee-bombs are permissible, they aren't nearly so entertaining. Happily, this tended to limit their pee-bomb proclivities. One day, one of the boys was telling a story, and I was writing down what he said word for word. In my class, a child would tell a story. I'd transcribe it word for word. The class would act it out, and then I'd send a hard copy of the story home for the child's parents. Writing down exactly what a child says word for word, grammatical errors and all, is important because it honors the child's authentic voice. The boy started off in a fairly unremarkable fashion, a sort of variation on Eric Carle's The Very Hungry Caterpillar. And then I heard it. Bitchy. Did he say bitchy? I froze. I didn't know what to do. I was supposed to write down exactly what he said word for word, but should that include the word bitchy? If I wrote down what he said, we'd have to act it out. If we acted it out, how would I explain this new vocabulary word to the other 5-year-olds? And how could I send this story home to his parents? I panicked. My nascent career flashed before my eyes. Was this the beginning of the end? Would my life as a teacher crash and burn before it even got off the ground? I couldn't think straight. I felt like I was performing a high wire act without a net. One false move could end everything. I tried buying some time. What? I said, feigning ignorance and hoping he would pick a different word. Nope. He said it again. All the children were staring at me. I didn't want to overreact, and I definitely didn't want to make things worse. What to do? What to do? I needed time to think. What? I asked again. One of the little girls had had enough. If I was ignorant, she would enlighten me. She knew exactly what he had said and thought I should too. He said, Bitsy, you know, like the itsy bitsy spider? Bitsy, he said, Bitsy. Relieved, I wrote the word Bitsy, like the itsy bitsy spider. I love Bitsy. I love the Bitsy girl who saved my Bitsy career. I love the itsy bitsy letters that distinguish Bitsy from bitchy, the proper from the profane, the employed from the unemployed, and the dirt-free from the doggone dirty. Years later, I'm still a fan of spicing things up with the prudent use of a few dirty words, but context is everything. So this next story is another one of my little micro pieces. It was just published, I think last week maybe, in Bright Flash Literary Review. It's called Of Love and Longing. Gran's Holiday Feast. Warm cinnamon donuts on dainty doilies. Fragrant aromas wafting, mingling, harmonizing with hints of the pipe tobacco Granddad pretends he never smokes. Candles flicker, flavors of love and longing, music and laughter, a symphony of sentiments, sounds, and scents. Yesteryear enveloped in wrapping paper, ribbon, and yearning. This last piece that I'm going to read for you is a little hybrid piece. I think you'll get it as I read it. It was part of it was published, and I'll tell you at the end. It's called A Fable. It's long after I should have gone to bed, but I'm nonetheless still on my computer when I happen upon information about a poetry society and a list of their poetry contests. Many of the contests have very specific requirements. There's a sonnet written in rhyme and meter contest, an ekphrastic contest, a contest for poems about a historic event written in iambic pentameter, a contest for poems about birds with no more than 48 lines, and a contest for poems celebrating technology. Then I notice a limerick contest. Does anyone even write limericks these days? I know I don't. Limericks seem a bit silly to me, and to be honest, I doubt I could write a decent limerick even if I tried. So I turn off my computer and go to bed. The next morning, I wake up with a limerick racing around in my head. So I get out of bed and type. The tortoise. Tortoise and hare are mere fable of one more willing than able. Yet try with his might, he altered his plight, toppling a preconceived label. I upload my limerick to the contest site and click submit. Unlike the tortoise, I did not win the contest, but I did come in second. And like the tortoise, I learned that the far-fetched and clearly unfeasible, the crazy and quite inconceivable, can often be done and even be fun. And limericks, for me, are achievable. Thank you for listening to my stories. I'm going to put some information if you want to look them up or look at my website where you can read the lighter ones and also some of the darker stories. So I'm going to put that in the chat right now. Let's see.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That was great. And thank you, Jonathan. And thank you, Susan, for being such supportive and amazing teachers for Wendy and for all of your other students. We are going to have another student reading on June 2nd. So please mark your calendars for that. Now
That's
it's
June?
time for
Is that June or January?
That's June
Okay.
2nd. It's a while away from now. We'll be sending you plenty of reminders. Now we're going to hear from our last reader of the evening, and his name is Tony Haworth. He has been my student for almost as long as I have taught at the Hudson Valley Writers Center. He is an amazing poet, playwright, editor, journalist, teacher. He's 90 years old. He's 90 years young, and he has more energy and more enthusiasm for life than most people you will ever meet. Tony Haworth, editor in dramatic writing, for dramatic writing for the Westchester Review, is a playwright, director, former journalist. He retired in 1991 after 28 years as a high school teacher and college teacher of English and theater. William Wordsworth helped him survive adolescence, inspired him to write his own poetry, but as a college freshman at Yale, he found a sense that of something far more deeply interfused did not fit well in a climate devoted to the work of Eliot and Pope. He adjusted his ambitions to journalism, and he lived in 5 cities reporting there, including New York City, where he was editor of the editorial page of the World Telegram and Sun. Disillusioned after a printer's strike and the assassination of JFK, he turned to teaching, where he was asked to develop a theater program, which in turn led to a list of professional credits, including a dozen plays and musicals presented off-Broadway. His full lengths include Thornwood, which won a Drama League grant and was made into an award-winning indie film, Slings and Arrows. For many summers, he directed musicals at the College Light Opera Company in Massachusetts. He began writing poetry again in 2009 after a visit to Wordsworth's cottage in England's Lake District. His poetry developed at the Hudson Valley Writers Center, he says, under the treasured guidance of Jennifer Franklin and Fred Marchand. He has been published in many magazines, and his books are published by Broadstone Books, previously Wild Man of the Mountain and A Hand to Hold, as well as his brand new book, which you will hear Tony reading from today. Please, everyone, help me welcome the wonderful Tony Haworth. Tony, you need to unmute yourself. Please unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Here's. Can I show you the book? I'll get right. There's the book. It's called The Griefs That Fate Assigns, and if you're interested after this episode to you want to buy it and you go onto Amazon, be warned. There are 3 Tony Haworths listed. One of them has written a book about law. I have no idea what that means, and I have no idea what law. The other one is a poet, and his name is, like mine, Tony Haworth. And he has written a book which has a lot. I think it's in the title even. It's got the words grief and fate. So just get the right one, please. And one of the things I'd love to say is that Jane Eyre and Haworth Haworth is next to a larger community called Rochdale. And if you go to Rochdale, you can walk on Howarth Street, Howarth Alley, Howarth Books, the library, I think, is a Howarth something or other. There is a bus going through. There was when we were there. There was a bus going through. An advertisement on its side was "Vote Howarth." So it's just an interesting name, and it's got lots of variations all over the British Isles. But now, more serious things. This book is a memoir. It's got 70 pages, but don't worry, I'm not going to read all of them, much as I would like to. It begins when I was 6 in 1939, and England declares war on Germany. I get moved around a lot, evacuated to live with different relatives, never seeing my parents in all that time. When we're finally reunited, the vibes between the two of them were kind of worn out, shall we say. And then in 1944, in Gloucester, England, Yanks in every street and alley, killing time before the D-Day invasion. 2 of them in a taxi arrive at our house, arms wrapped all over my mother. In the kitchen, one bends over, drinks from the tap, spits into the sink, barks at her, "Get rid of the kid." She ushers me outside, where the neighbors' kids who watched the taxi arrive serenade me with sneers. All right, I'm up to page 19 now. The war is over in 1945. Us lads, a fire-fixing dozen, go marching door to door, rat-a-tat. What do you have that we can burn? A bonfire to put the past behind us. No more nights in pissy stinks shelters. No more riding bikes blind in the dusk. Word spreads. A swirl of girls. Build a dummy. Charlie Chaplin, mustache and flat black quiff. We stick him on the tippy top. So long, Hitler. Pay back for the homes you blew apart. A chair with splintered legs, a shattered sledge, a pram with crooked wheels, a doll's house torn apart. All day we keep collecting. Never stop for lunch. Cornish pasty and a cup of tea on the fly. Grown-ups arrive. Add to the pile. 8 o'clock. We poke in bubbles of wrinkled paper, candles lit, and yay, a bonfire. When someone sings Rule Britannia, 200 people join in. When the White Cliffs of Dover and God Save the King, song after song. We laugh, we cry, we tell funny stories, whiskey bottles pass from hand to hand. Going on 11, I flop down, pooped. Dad carries me home in a firefighter grip, sends me to sleep in my bed in peace. 1946. Goes to London, dragged away from home. Hiding myself in the back of the class, doodling through a Latin translation, Fishy Walton comes prowling, leans over me, wants to know where I'm going. Brixton, sir, in London. Why? Please, sir, I don't know. My mother has been there a while, and now she's come back to fetch me. Well, you get yourself back here fast. You don't belong in Brixton. You belong here. All day, every day in Brixton. My mother's yank, lulling in bed. Me sent off on frequent errands, so she can join him there. And all the while in Brixton, Fishy Walton's growling kindness follows me. Gone poof. This is 1948. I come home from school, discover the furniture gone, even my bed. Mum breezes in, blinks twice. Not to worry, someone needs it more than we do. After the furniture disappears, so does she, on a plane to America. With all the dust-ups at home, I'm butchering my schoolwork, fearful of relegation from A stream to B. Younger than everyone in my form, I knock on the headmaster's door, ask him to set me back a year with a rugby ball. Setting me back one works wonders. Every fortnight ranked in the top 3. Invited to join the Colts rugby team mid-season, elevated to captain. And Dad is ecstatic. He played scrum half for Rochdale's rugby club. With Mum gone, dinner every night together. Sometimes I cook, sometimes he does. Outside afterwards with a rugby ball, running the length of the street playing catch. Dishes washed, he heads for his favorite pub, me left alone to tackle my homework until my ticket to America slides through the letter slot. No warning, not a word. Mother claiming custody. LaGuardia. I'm 14 years old. Crowded, noisy, 9 in the morning. Nowhere can I find my mother. A loudspeaker barks the flights and arrivals. I find the loudspeaker, ask her to tell my mother where I am. Then wait and wait. Begin to panic. An airline attendant comes from behind the desk, takes me to the coffee shop, buys me coffee and a waffle, asks me where I am going next. I tell him Cleveland. Asks me to show him my ticket, tells me it only takes me to New York. Asks me who bought the ticket, tells me he's off to make some phone calls. I eat the waffle, drink the coffee. He returns and tells me a woman called Johnson has bought me a seat on the 7 o'clock flight to Cleveland. A woman called Johnson? All he can say is, she bought me the ticket. The airport clock says 1 o'clock. Changed her name. Johnson. Why am I not surprised? What to do for the next 6 hours? Cleveland. In a taxi from the airport. I have to tell you, you have a new father. I look away, tell her his name is Johnson. The rest is silence. A skin-crawling day. At breakfast, Mum giggles as Johnson pokes fun at the limey passion for a cup of tea. A reporter and photographer interrupt me in my overflowing cornflakes. Take me on a tour of downtown stores. Next day, I catch a streetcar, go exploring a soda fountain in a corner drugstore, cherry Coke, and the newspaper. On the front page, America's luxurious abundance, 13-year-old Brit boy dazzled. Dead father was captain in Royal Navy, torpedoed in Indian Ocean. My dad is D-E-A-D? That four-letter word. I can't speak it. I choke on it because it's not true. Because it smells of her wish that it were. Back at the flat, I let fly. Bloody hell, what were you thinking? A troop ship? 13? No, I'm 14. Why would you cut a year out of my life? She blinks twice, swears the reporter got it wrong. You know what they say about reporters, how we can never trust what they tell us. Because I don't belong here. I hear it still, ghostly moan of the airplane's motor as I sat staring into darkness, torn from my dad. I hear it still, mood music for what she's doing. Because that four-letter word, is this what she told the reporter? I saw her muttering secretly with him as the photographer captured me swallowing cornflakes. That four-letter word. I will never again believe anything she has to say. On a bench by the lake, endless water, like the ocean, a place to throw tormenting pebbles at seagulls, make them screech away in a flurry. The divorce. And look where she got it. Look who she gets. All the plunder he rifled during the war. Twinkle-eye nymph, naked on a bed of painted daisies. Bronze workman with a pickaxe on a manly chunk of sparkling rock. It's quiet here. If they get tired, they can paddle, rest, then they fly further, wherever they want, land somewhere in the icy distance. Life makes sense to them. Don't like where they built a nest, fly somewhere else. Oh, but of course. Oh my, how could I not recognize somebody I wanted to erase from memory? Brixton Yank. Scream it, so it travels across the city, so he will hear it. My dad is alive. Why? Cooped up with them in Brixton, learned how to live with it. Now, my dad bullshit dead. Why? A year torn off my life. Why? Ask and all I get are blinks. Oh, if I'm 1 year younger, she is too, huh? Sweeter meat for Yankee teeth? If I had my passport, I could prove I'm 14, but I can't. She's hidden it. Why? In Brixton, I spent my days in the library, in the basement of a bombed-out building, inhabited the cinema between films and organ, rising from under the floor. Now, again, I don't care about why. I've got to care about how to live with it. That's the end of my reading. If I could, I'd like to read a poem which I wrote when I was 15. Can I do it? Yes.
Sure, Tony.
Yeah. It's to sleep and dream. In every sphere, two lanes exist as one. Utopia, land where all is what one likes. The land of sleep where one can dream alone. And lets imagination run its course. And then the land where Zola struts is there, where truth and vivid life combine to form tumult and strife. For those one does not care, and yet there is no compromise in sight. One cannot sport his oak and walk the street. He either has to live a hermit's life or greet with cheer all those he haps to meet, and Zola air is victor in the strife. The land I love is far away from me, and cloaked in red and white and cloudy blue. White is the winter fur that crowns each tree, and the snow and ice that gaily rule the earth. Red like the eyes that weep in pride, or like the sword that slew the monster newt. Blue as the cheerful scudded sky, as the tide that laps the tide-old island's war-swept shores. All there is pleasant in my frequent dreams, and when I wake each cold and drizzly morn, the rain is gushing down the street in streams, for all that life does hold returns to me. What are we on this earth but victims of our fate? Some of us can stand quite strong like czars or saints, but souls like mine must sleep and dream to sate the secret yearnings of their silent hearts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tony. It was wonderful to hear you read this book. I know you've been working on it for a very long time, and it's very dear to your heart and to ours, all the people who have worked on these poems with you. So thank you all for being with us today. We truly appreciate you being here to support your students, your classmates, your friends. And please don't forget that all of the January, February, March, April classes are already up on the website. We hope that you will come for our 2 readings in January. Don't forget to check out all of our other events like Open Rights and Submission Sundays, where you will have support sending out your work. Thank you all for being here. Happy New Year. Let's hope that it's a lot more peaceful than this year has been. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.